My name is Ziggy, and today I'm joined by someone I never thought I'd interview, but I'm very glad to interview. Radio Rahim, how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, Radio Rahim here with Ziggy.
Yeah.
Hey, did you get that name from Bob Marley's son?
Yes.
Nice.
My mum used to work with Ziggy Marley, so that's where it came
You're kidding
from.
me?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, well, now you got to do the name proud.
Yeah.
We might have to get a little bit of a reggae beat out of you before this thing is
Well,
done.
I don't know if we'll get that, but no, I appreciate that because everyone thinks it comes from Ziggy Stardust.
No, I know. I can hear it. I can hear the soul. I hear the soul.
He knows. We're here, KSI press conference.
Yeah.
You've been around boxing so many years, all the big events you've done. Talk to me about what it's like being around the Misfit scene and the KSI fights.
Well, the KSI and the Misfit scene is a bit special to me because you may remember from the very, very beginning when they were in Manchester Arena and it was KSI and Logan Paul, but they were amateurs. Nobody really knew anything about them from the boxing world. It was all like YouTubers and online kids that were following this thing. I flew from Hollywood all the way from California to Manchester specifically to cover their fight because I started to understand online that these guys had a following that was important. Your generation, really, that was following these kids into boxing, and where the boxing world was ignoring them, I went and paid some attention, and it was an incredible event. I saw the next generation of boxing fans being born in Manchester Arena thanks to KSI and Logan Paul, and so whenever these guys are fighting, whenever they're in the spotlight, I'm always sure to be there and cover it because I support it. I think without them, the younger generation would have a hard time finding the sport and have a hard time finding heroes in the sport. So both KSI, Logan, Jake, all these guys, Deji, have given us an opportunity to give a new generation of boxing fan a new look, a different kind of look at boxing. Obviously, a guy facing two fighters in one night is very untraditional, but it's the kind of thing that younger fans are into. So it's always important whenever these guys are in the ring that I'm ringside.
Talk to me about your journey into this. What first off got you into boxing, and then what transpired into you getting into the game of the media?
My story goes back, many years now because I've been doing it since I was a teenager. And I started at Wild Card Boxing Gym in Hollywood, California, shooting sparring sessions. This is back in the day when fighters would let you shoot sparring sessions and put them online. So I created a show called Gym Wars where I would commentate sparring sessions, and that went online and became a really huge success. And I, cut my teeth at Wild Card Boxing Gym. Freddie Roach, it was Manny Pacquiao, came in the door and changed the game. And it's everything else has been history. But I've stayed in the game since I was a teenager, so I've watched this thing change over the years. I've seen new fans come. I've been around long enough for a fighter's career to begin like Amir Khan and for him to retire, and I'm still here. So this boxing, it's not just a career, it's a life. So welcome to the life.
Your longevity in the game, as I said, it's crazy, right? You've been around so many years. What keeps the fire in you to keep coming to these events? I mean, even for me, I'm just getting into the game. Come to these events is incredible. What is it like for you to be doing it all these years and keep coming and keep coming?
Let me tell you the key. You'll never see the same fight twice, even if it's the same fighters. Every single Saturday night is a different combination of energy, a different moment. These guys don't wake up the same guy every day. So they call it the sweet science. Let me tell you where the science is. It's an experiment. Every fight's an experiment. This thing we're seeing on August 31st, it's an experiment. You're seeing all these elements come together for the first time in the form that they're in on that night, and we all have to try to predict and figure out what's going to happen when these explosive elements come together. That's the science of boxing. And so every single time out, it's different. And that's why I stay excited because I've never seen what I'm about to see before. And the thing I just saw, I'll never see again.
Yeah. I listened to your full podcast with Joe Rogan. Just talk to me about what it's like to interview all these different characters, right? All these different people in boxing. What goes into the process of when you're doing these interviews with all these different characters, and talk to me about some of your experiences?
Listen, Joe Rogan's an inspiration, man. Like, again, he's in MMA, but it's the same kind of energy and excitement and obsession with combat sports that he has that I relate to. And then him being a media figure beyond the MMA and UFC world, but, having to give an opportunity for people to look into other people's lives and perspectives and angles on the world and speak to people from all different walks of life, all different careers and in all kinds of industries. It's the kind of thing that I also do. I have a podcast called Till This Day. But it's not about boxing. It is me speaking to people from all different walks of life about the fight inside them. This is another thing that really makes boxing the world that I have to live in, because the fight inside the people, not just in the ring, but around the world, that you have to overcome adversity. You have to beat really your own doubts, your own fears to be successful in anything that you do. So I apply the structure of a world and a life that is lived inside the ring for fighters to the rest of my life and the world that I live in. And that is what makes me want to talk to a Joe Rogan, and, you know, thankfully, gratefully, humbly makes a Joe Rogan want to talk to me. These are the things that, you know, tie us together. You got to find out what's in your heart that connects you to the sport, and then you'll find that that translates beyond the sport. And that's what we all want to be, I think, transcendent of the pursuit that we're in. So at some stage, I lived this in this world long enough to realize what it meant to me outside of this world, and I'm able to communicate that in all different venues and platforms. So, you know, that's a blessing, but that comes with experience, and you got to pay attention to it. You got to really recognize what you love and feed it.
Talk to me about when you first got into the boxing media world. What was it like then compared to, you almost get brought a new life to, you know, people like myself that would not be doing this if it wasn't for what you do. Talk to me about when you first got into the boxing world of media, what it was like then, what it's like now.
I didn't get into the boxing world of media. I started the boxing world of media, so it kind of grew around me. I started, like I said, at Wildcard Boxing Gym, but before that, there really wasn't this industry of people with their own cameras putting stuff online. Even when I started, it was around a show called Gym Wars, but then I started to interview the fighters before the sparring session, after the sparring session. Started to go to events with my little trusty camera and interview fighters at events and put that on our website, which at the time was Max Boxing. It was really one of the only sites at the time that was covering boxing, like, journalistically. So that is not something that I saw happening and did it. It's something I did, and then it started to happen. So I've watched this thing grow at every stage. I've seen the technology make it easier for people to do this. I was around to see YouTube begin when it was just, you know, websites before YouTube, and then YouTube gave it a new breath. Well, the beauty of it is, around the world, they don't give the attention to boxing like they do to football or, you know, cricket in this country, or baseball or basketball in America. It's the always stepchild of all these, you know, media outlets and sports channels. So we, who are on the ground, who are the grassroots, we're the ones who keep boxing conversations alive. That's why it happens on social media. That's why it happens on YouTube, because guys like you have followed the footsteps of guys like me, and guys like KSI have followed the footsteps of guys like Floyd Mayweather, and found a way into this sport to make it their own, give it their own flavor. But we won't let it die. The mass media, the networks, if it weren't for us, boxing would be dead. We're the heartbeat of this entire industry. And don't forget it. So when you show up at these events and you cover these fights, know that you're what's keeping it alive, not them.
Talk to me about, so what advice would you have for me, right? I'm sort of starting at the bottom of the pyramid in the media game. You know, getting to talk to certain people is quite difficult. What advice would you have to me coming up in this sort of world that, you know, I want to make this a career for myself?
Stay true to yourself. Don't let them push you around, especially when you're young and it's early. And right now, there's a lot of people vying for the same interview you're trying to get. So they'll make you feel like you have to behave a certain way or only ask certain questions so that you can stay friendly with the fighters and the promoters like you. But at that stage, you're not a journalist anymore. Now you're just a little mini promoter who's not being paid. Don't let yourself fall into that category. Do your research. Find out what's interesting about the fight. Find out what's challenging for the fighter and present them with the challenges. Challenge yourself, first of all, your courage to ask the tough question, and challenge the fighter to answer it. Don't let them push you around. And you got to find your own style. Whatever your voice is, however you come at that and make that work, only you can find that. But when you find it, hold on to it and stay true to it, and don't trade it away just for access. It'd be better to get banned from something for being a journalist than to be let in just by being a little suck-ass promoter.
One of those instances, the infamous, till this day, Deontay Wilder. Just talk to me about that, where you've got the then WBC heavyweight champion of the world, one of the baddest men in boxing of all time, and you've got him in your face. You know, you've done your job, right? You've asked him a question that got him emotionally involved. Talk to me about when you've got him in your face and in that moment.
Well, it's one of the moments like I'm talking to you about, right? It's an intimidating moment. To be honest, at the beginning, I didn't know he was yelling at me. I thought he was just mad at white America, which I was on board with. Like, yeah, let's get him. But then at some point, I was like, oh, this guy's fucking yelling at me. Well,
that's not great.
That's not great. But I was giving him a platform to speak about a subject and a topic that he brought up in tussling with Tyson Fury about the lineage of black people in America and the struggle that was very specific that he was referring to coming out of slavery, in a Jim Crow, in a institutional racism. And he and I, that conversation before. So I thought I would tee him up to give that conversation to the world, being that he was on a global stage and he misunderstood the intention of my question. And it created this moment that, yes, was tough and difficult between the two of us, but really it gave more spotlight to what he was trying to say than probably even if he had been understanding my question and been articulated about it. And that is where the journalism comes into play. If I had shrunk in the moment or try to change the question or cut the camera and run off, then that moment never happens. Or if I don't have the courage to ask that question when I know he's hot-headed, when I know it's an intense moment where he's just got finished tussling with Tyson Fury and who knows what he's going to say, I just stay in it. I had to stay true to myself and what I do and let him do the thing. And it became really probably the most memorable moment outside of the ring of his career and mine. So that is what journalism is. And whenever that happens, whether it's on camera or not, hold your ground, know what you're doing because you did your research, you know what you're doing, you know the question is valid, and stick to it. That's the whole key, man.
Finally, for me, don't want to keep you too long. What is it? What are your favourite interviews to do? Like, what are people that you maybe fighters or people outside of boxing, sort of in and around, that you look at that when you interview them, you're like, that's a good interview, or who's maybe a challenging?
At different times, anyone can be a challenge because it's an emotional sport. And when you're talking to a fighter, you have to be conscious of where they are on weight cut. Whether or not the fight is just ended, if they won or lost, if they've got something else happening that is distracting them, can you get their attention back into the interview? Sometimes they don't want to be like, you're the 15th interview they've done. They think they're going to ask the same questions. They want to get the hell out of there. And you got to figure out a way to come at them in some way that's different from everybody else, the last 14 guys that have been standing in the same spot that you're in. So any fight, or I should say any interview about a fight can be difficult depending on how you approach it. But my favorite time to interview a fighter is right after the fight. It's most raw. We both just saw and experienced something differently, right? Like what I saw is not what he saw. He was in the fight, right? What I experienced is not what he experienced. He was in the fight. I was ringside. But we both have some raw emotion around what just went on. And because I have had this experience multiple times, and by trial and error, they aren't all great. I've had some shitty ones. But I've had some incredible moments. And right after a fight, that's when you can have like the most raw, honest conversation with a fighter. And so that's my favorite. And it's also the most challenging for me because all of these other things I have to consider while talking to that fighter is in play.
Do you have a favorite moment that you'll look back on when it's all said and done, and you look back on your career and you go, that was my favorite moment. That was the one that showed who I was, but also just the most memorable to you?
I would hope to say at every stage of my life that my favorite moment is the next moment.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, Rahim, thank you very much, brother.
Ziggy,
this has been incredible for me. I've actually learned so much during this. This is ingrained up here, and I'm going to take this forward into what I do. So thank you very much. You've been an inspiration to me watching all your interviews for years. So really appreciate it, man.
You've done very well, Ziggy. It was a good interview. You kept it on point. You had a question that was relevant after the next question that was relevant. And you wrapped it up because I'm just about tired of doing it. So you figured out when to stop. That's also important. Know when the interview is over. Ziggy, my guy right here, Radio Rahim with Ziggy.